the budget as a giant entity, let's take that off the table for a second. We would take pension reform off the table. As mayor, and very briefly, what are your three top priorities? Leave pension over here because we've discussed that enough. What are your other priorities? Tell me something I don't already know about what you think needs to happen in the city so that the people, the taxpayers of the city, are happier and believe in government again.
That you don't already know.
Well, I'm just give me your three. What are your three top priorities, Tony, outside of pension, say pension reform?
Sure, you're real Irish there. The absolute elimination of systemic corruption that has.
Give me an example. Give me. I want a little more.
A little example. Let's just try non-competitively bid contracts that are being doled out in the hundreds of millions to the very power players that have been running this city for 20 years. Let's just try that for a start. Okay. Let's just try to monitor the nonprofit homeless industry service providers whose business is what? Homelessness. So now we're paying 10 times more than we were 10 years ago. Let's just try this manipulation of campaign finance laws that has been in the paper the last couple of days. I can give you 100 examples. The city is corrupt. So I will bring to the table absolutely zero tolerance for pay-to-play insider corruption. 2, economic reform. How do we use the city to promote small business? Absolute streamlining of the regulatory and red tape that is killing small business in San Francisco. Parking meters. I handled that program for the courts for years. I know exactly what I'm talking about. And 3, what would I bring? Something that we haven't had in 20 years. Honest, open, transparent government that serves the people first. I'm not running for higher office. I'm here to use my experience as a person who has the integrity, the honesty, and the courage to stand up and do what's right for the people. That's just 3 examples, but being Irish and Italian myself, I can go on and on forever. So whatever you want.
Joanna, top 3 priorities?
Educational excellence. It's going to take the mayor making public education a high-level priority because it's going to be a community-wide effort in order to transform our public schools, which means going back to neighborhood schools, really working to create community schools, and by community schools, we fund a lot of programs to support children and families and locating a lot of those services on site at the school, whether that's social work, mental health care, after-school programs. So kids can be in one safe place all day from when they get dropped off in the morning till 6 o'clock, but with a lot of supportive infrastructure. I think there's a tremendous opportunity to engage the business community to support the public school system, especially in areas like professional development, which are the first things that are cut, in helping principals and teachers and using some of their capacity in that, as well as providing internships for kids who, if they can see a pathway to opportunity, it helps keep them engaged in school. And then I always say we're like the shoemakers, kids who don't have any shoes in terms of innovation, because we're supposed to be the innovation capital of the world. And there's a lot of incredible innovation happening in public education in areas like adaptive learning, and we're not doing any of it here. And I think this is an opportunity to get the philanthropic community, who I spend a lot of time talking to about public education, who will not put money directly into the school system, but will pilot innovation and innovative programs. So that's job number 1.
Well, let me just interject there. The mayor has no authority over the school district, so
it's about bringing resources to the school district and working with the school district. And the school district wants this support. The school district would love. When I sit down with Carlos Garcia, he said, professional development, I don't know how to get the business community to support, helping us with that. I don't know how to reach out to the philanthropic community to pilot some of this innovation. The fact that we're still, if we use textbooks, there's so much happening in digital textbooks and adaptive learning that we're not taking advantage of. And there's no money to do it. And he doesn't have the capacity to do that. The mayor sits in a unique position to be able to bring in these different resources and bring them to the school system, not working against it.
Privately generated funds, because the city's broke too. So.
Yeah, it has to be. We have to be entrepreneurial. There's no money coming from the state. We just had another massive budget cut for the public school system here. And so we have to look for new ways to solve this problem in the near term. We can't wait and say, oh, well, we'll just wait until the money comes.
So what are your views on charter schools?
I know charter schools well. I've funded many charter management organizations like KIPP and Aspire, which is in the East Bay. The original theory of change of charter schools was charter schools would put competitive pressure on the district to change. I think you have to look at it in a different way, and that hasn't happened. I think charters can really provide a platform for shared learning. There's some structural things that are happening in charter schools where they're having great success with the same population of students, and rather than saying that's a bad thing, how can we learn from one another? So as mayor, also to set up a collaborative forum for the charter schools, the private schools, and the public schools for shared learning, I think is really, it's critical. So I think there's a lot we can learn from them, but I'm talking about how can we support the district, not work outside the district, but how as mayor do we support the district?
So that was number one, so you
Yeah.
can continue with 2 and 3.
Okay. 2 is I started off by saying we have to grow our way out of the budget deficit. So it's about keeping jobs here, which I think what we did with Twitter was a Band-Aid solution, and it's kind of what we do. We wait until there's a crisis. Oh, Twitter's going to leave the city, so how can we help them stay? I think we have to change the tax structure systemically across the growth economy. Taxing the employee payroll tax and the stock option tax has proven now for a long time that it doesn't help us retain jobs. We've just had a mass exodus. And as I said, I spend a lot of time with entrepreneurs who tell me, we're here now, but when we get to 50 or 100 employees, we're probably going to leave because of this additional tax. So I think that, and we have great economics that show that when you eliminate it, like what we do with biotech, we actually attract jobs here, and we actually make money as a city when the jobs are located here. And combined with that is back to what I talk about, this kind of entrepreneurial spirit. I don't think we do enough. We run things the way that they run, and then when they fall off a cliff, we say, oh my gosh, now we have to go fix them, rather than always looking, how do we continue to optimize and iterate? If you think about even things with Muni, why aren't we continually testing our limited stop bus lines? You know, we run them the way we run them for years and years and years, and do we ever say, you know, maybe it should stop every 25 blocks, and what happens to usage as well as increasing travel time? Or, you know, this idea of constantly iterating and trying to improve and really putting it, you know, kind of, I don't think you can change cultures, but I do think you can influence cultures, and I think the influence I'd want to bring into City Hall is bringing more of this entrepreneurial, I call it entrepreneurial spirit, but rewarding people for improving service to the community by spending less money. Because entrepreneurs do more than anyone thinks is possible with less. And then the third thing is really providing an open understanding of how the city spends its money, which we don't provide now, and making those budgets easily readable. I did a talk in North Beach last night, and people said, are there other cities that are doing a good job with this? In New York, you know, I feel like we're supposed to be the leader in innovation, and New York is out innovating us in lots of ways. But the New York City budget is really easy to read. It's a PowerPoint presentation. It has contingency plans of what will happen next quarter if, you know, unemployment goes up or this goes down. So it's very easy for people to understand. So I could go on more about that, but I'll give Leland time.
Sure. You know, when I was on the Board of Supervisors about 10 years ago, the budget was $3 billion. It is now it's about 6.7, $6.8 billion. So you have to ask the question, well, what are we spending the money on, and whether or not are we getting the best bang for the dollars? And so part of my agenda is that I've got to look at the dollars that we are using and whether or not they are effective, efficient, and in fact, working to take care of the problems that we have identified. I think that is going to be a tremendous effort that's going to take quite a bit of time. But I think that process needs to happen, needs to start with earnest. I think that's one thing that I would do. I think you've got to also be rather creative in how do we utilize what resources we have, but to do it more efficiently. So, for example, I think that we are constantly looking at GEO-bonds for fixing this, fixing that, and as you know, GEO-bonds are extremely expensive. It is not only the principal, but it is also the interest that you have to pay for that. That indebtedness just constantly kills us on that. And so the question is whether or not we can look at different ways of then borrowing or bonding. Instead of GEO bond, let's look at revenue bond. Let's dedicate some dollars out of the general fund and then use some of that dollars to then bond against those dollars, which is a lot cheaper. So I think that when we're looking at the fixing our parks, fixing our schools, and others, there's a tendency to try and maximize whatever amount of dollars that we can get out. I just think that you've got to be a lot more sophisticated and a lot more careful in terms of how do you generate those dollars. When I was chair of the Finance Committee, I established the largest rainy day fund in the history of the city of San Francisco. And the reason why that happened is that you have to be extremely disciplined. There's always going to be temptation to spend it here, spend it there, but we've got to be a lot more disciplined than we've had. And I think looking at more creative ways of using the dollars that we have, I think is something that's absolutely critical. I think the final point that I would say is that we also got to grow ourselves out of this economic doldrum. And I think that part of it is that we've got to find ways to entice businesses to come into San Francisco. There's all the regulatory problems. There are all these kinds of things that people say about how it is so difficult to open up a business in San Francisco. But I think that we've got to provide some kind of a support system for new businesses coming into San Francisco, particularly small businesses. And so the question about, well, should we somehow set aside dollars to be helpful for some of these businesses, either through tax holidays or either through some kind of an assistance, helping these businesses plant their roots in San Francisco and help them to grow. I think that if you don't do that, then what you're going to end up doing is you say that you want to be business friendly, you invite them to come, but it's either sink or swim. And we don't do that with children, we don't do that with other individuals. I don't understand why then we do it for businesses. We ought to create an environment where we can help them grow. Because at the end of the day, if they grow, then the dollars that they generate will pour back into the city coffers and help that general fund. So I think those are the things that I'm particularly excited about doing, because then we can grow ourselves out of this economic doldrum, provide the resources that we need to pay for the social service, healthcare service, other kinds of services, and then at the same time maintain and sustain that revenue stream.